Hello, and welcome to all. A jumping, spinning heel kick, literally cataclysmic, a roundhouse kick in the face, enough to send you to hell, or a masterful and deadly elbow back. Here are the 10 most improbable, most spectacular, and most insane KOs in women's MMA. Some female MMA fighters have attack techniques inherited by Muay Thai, one of the deadliest combat sports of all martial arts. This dangerous Thai martial art was originally created for warfare, as the strategists of the time assumed that an unarmed soldier would be just as lethal to the enemy, his limbs becoming weapons in their own right. It is for this reason that this combat sport includes knee and elbow strikes, which are extremely powerful and deadly, and which are mostly banned from other martial arts. In this pure adrenaline sequence, you will see one of the most terrible and spectacular knockouts ever, during a particularly deadly elbow strike. During an eventful encounter in UFC or Ultimate Fighting Championship, the British fighter Molly McCann and her Brazilian counterpart Luana Carolina will engage in a real fight without mercy. The most powerful blows were going to rain down during this clash of the titans. But one thing is certain, no one was expecting this fearsome spin elbow strike that you're going to see right now. Indeed, the young English boxer hit her Brazilian opponent with a powerful roundhouse elbow, sending her straight to the mat in one of the most spectacular and insane KOs in the UFC. In this thrilling sequence, you will witness a knockout from another planet, which proves how strong and dangerous some women can be. These surprising images come from the Invicta Fighting Championships, an American women's MMA competition. This colorful championship offers its audience a sensational show, as it usually hosts the most spectacular matches within women's MMA. One of the fights counting for this prestigious championship, and opposing the two American fighters Emily Ducote and Danielle Taylor, we will be entitled to a dazzling KO, in the true sense of the word. No sooner had the first round begun than a superbly placed jab by Ducote hit Taylor in the face, making her wobble on the spot in a standing KO position. Ducote then finished off her poor opponent with a devastating kick to the head, causing her to collapse like a house of cards. We now leave room for a sequence worthy of the film saga Boyka, but in a candy pink version for this time. Because what you are going to see now on your screens is probably the most spectacular and brutal KO of all women's MMA, and certainly the fastest too. It was in 2014, during a striking fight between Stanley and the young and inexperienced Anita Runyon. The latter had indeed only one fight to her credit, which she had lost in a rather lamentable way. But by entering for the second time in her life in an official competition cage, the pretty young woman hoped to win her first victory this time. But the unfortunate woman was soon to be disappointed, because after only 5 seconds at the beginning of the fight, she was to suffer a cruel disappointment. As she was moving towards Stanley, trying to land a very weak punch, the latter jumped in the air and sent a spinning heel kick, literally cataclysmic. The poor novice fighter then fell heavily on the ground like a disarticulated puppet, and if you have the eye, you can even see a slight trembling at the level of her feet due to the violence of the blow. We continue our list of the most unrealistic knockouts in women's MMA with a sequence that proves to us how dangerous the octagon is, and where you shouldn't venture too far if you're afraid of getting hurt. The epic fight you are about to witness now brings together two Scandinavian fighters seasoned in mixed martial arts, the Swedish Bianca Antman and her Finnish counterpart Vera Nikonen. This duel of Valkyries was going to be very hard for the two young women, because both of them were almost at the same level of ferocity and pugnacity, and each one of them wanted to win the fight at all costs. A few minutes were enough for these two Nordic boxers to be completely out of breath and practically on the verge of exhaustion. Vera Nikonen was so marked by fatigue that she could not even lift her arms and box while keeping her guard up. This was a serious mistake on the part of the Finnish, since by lowering her guard, she offered her opponent a golden opportunity to send her to the mat. What the Swedish did not fail to do, by the way, and in a rather masterful and particularly painful way. Look at the destructive force of this circular kick, which hit the poor Finnish fighter in the face, sending her eating dandelions directly by the root. In the breathtaking sequence that follows, we are delighted to see another splendid blonde creature with blue eyes and deadly blows. This Homeric duel that you are watching now took place in 2018 in Bucharest during the European MMA Championships and brought together two novice fighters, of which it was, by the way, the first fight to both. The Swedish Frida Vastamaki in blue and the Italian Emanuela Scioli in red had very little or even almost no experience in fighting. But at the end of the third round of this fierce fight, the sublime Swedish boxer struck a powerful right kick that hit poor Emanuela right on the temple, making her nauseous with pain and sending her biting the dust. This extremely brutal knockout left the unfortunate Italian boxer completely stunned on the ground, putting an end to her ordeal, but also to all her hopes of becoming an MMA champion one day. On this incredibly brutal sequence, we're going to take a look at another clash of the titans in small skirts, and that only the Women's MMA Championships can offer us. The fascinating fight you're about to see took place on March 6, 2021 at the UFC 259 event and featured some of the best male and female fighters in mixed martial arts. On one side of the cage, you have Megan Anderson, a beautiful and fierce Australian warrior with an almost entirely tattooed body. And on the other, you have Norma Dumont, a young and pretty Brazilian who has become an expert in jiu-jitsu. This sublime Amazonian warrior had in fact started off very well in her career in the women's UFC, accumulating 4 successive victories, and she was counting on adding a 5th to her list of achievements. But it was necessary to count without the fury and the rage to win of her Australian opponent, who certainly did not want to lose this highly crucial fight for her sporting career. The duel was therefore at least arduous, and both boxers were ready to do anything to fight. But the fight was not going to last much longer, because at the minute 3:31 exactly, the Australian Black Widow sent a surprising jab that literally plunged her opponent in the darkness. You can replay the video as many times as you can and see this move from every angle, and you still won't be able to explain it, as it seems to come from another galaxy. The Superman punch is one of the most spectacular and enjoyable punches to watch in a fight, except of course for the one who receives it in the face. But by the way, how can we name this punch in women's MMA a Superwoman punch, for example? Well, if this nomenclature suits you, we are going to show you one of these terribly powerful punches, but which is carried by a woman this time. Be careful if the sight of hemoglobin makes you sick, because on this sequence, blood will flow, and not only a little in truth. The German Christina Brewer in black dress and the Spanish Patricia Rodriguez indeed delivered themselves to a fight without mercy in order to win the holy grail of the victory that night. The violent fight seemed to go on forever and did not want to end, so much the two young women were fighting and ultra-resistant. But at the end of the second round, the superb German boxer was going to take out a special boot, which was going to settle the outcome of this pugilism in a rather bloody way. Admire the power developed by Brewer in this jumping punch of any beauty, which sent the poor Spanish boxer directly in the arms of Morpheus. The force and fulgurance of Superman punch were moreover so devastating that it caused a rather ugly wound to Rodriguez, whose blood literally flooded the face, as you can see it on these terrifying images. We are going to show you now one of the fastest and most dazzling KOs in the history of women's MMA. The fight pits two beautiful but fierce beginner fighters against each other, and they are naturally ready to do anything to get the victory. Veronica Rothmanhauser in the yellow jersey and her rival Ashley Evans-Smith in the black jersey were both highly motivated to win, and this brawl promised to be exciting to say the least. However, only 5 seconds later, the fight ended with a terrible KO, as you can see on these amazing pictures. Indeed, as soon as the referee of the match gave the sign of departure, the beautiful Veronica Rothmanhauser ran directly towards her opponent, hit her on the spot with a powerful punch that sent her to have sweet dreams with the Sandman. And as always on your favorite YouTube channel, we have reserved the best for last, with this sequence that will surprise many. Because here we are not talking about a crazy knockout, but rather about a completely absurd fight, which features fighters who are, to say the least, improbable. These curious images show us indeed the strange meeting between Alexander Pistoletov, a YouTuber and Russian porn actor, and Sasha Mamaha, a model sized XXXL with almost monstrous measurements. This colorful fight did not bode well, But despite the absurdity of the show, the public was literally fascinated by this duel of a still unknown kind. And everyone had eyes only for these two amazing characters and their completely crazy fight. But as if this incongruous show was not enough, an intruder had to add his grain of salt by introducing himself in the cage. Indeed, at the moment when Alexander Pistoletov was getting the upper hand on Mamaha, executing a rather basic hold on her, a troublemaker came out of nowhere and threw himself on the YouTuber to hit him. This famous stranger turned out to be a friend of the big model, who, seeing her lose the fight, had decided to help her. Of course, it will have been useless, because once the agents were able to master this parasite and to take him out of the cage, the fight resumed exactly where it had been interrupted, with Mamaha in very bad position. Now it's up to you to tell us in the comments which of these most surreal KOs surprised you the most. Don't forget to subscribe and to click here to watch another of our videos.